flavor, right? There's a lot of love in it.
Derek, you're gonna have to mute your dinner.
I'm muted. I'm muted.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. You can hear me. Hello? Good evening. Welcome. My name is Dominique Sharpton Bright. I'm the National Director of Membership for National Action Network, and I'm also the co-chair person for National Action Network's Youth Huddle. And we are here joining again on this Monday evening, having another virtual gathering for National Action Network's Youth Huddle. And so we welcome all of you who have joined us virtually for this experience. National Action Network is one of the leading civil rights organizations in the nation with over 100 chapters. We were founded in 1991 by the Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton with injustice on his mind and peace. And Reverend Sharpton grew up and worked in the tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement for peace, for justice. And he coined the phrase, no justice, no peace. And so we are here many years later after this concept of National Action Network has been created. And we are here in a space that is very, very active, and it's very conducive to us as thought provokers, as activists, as leaders of our community, as voices of our community, as people who are concerned with what is going on in our community and in our nation. We assemble and we gather for young people, for the next generation, for the next generation of leaders, the young dreamers of today and leaders of tomorrow, to convene to talk about the issues that are relevant to us, the issues that are prevalent to us, but also on the solutions that we must take and that we must do personally and collectively to really seek the change that we want to see. And so we're gathering tonight for another virtual gathering. We understand that some safety restrictions still prohibit us to meet in person. And so we appreciate the platform to be able to gather virtually, to still raise our voice collectively, to still talk about these issues and talk about the solutions. And so tonight we dedicate this huddle, this virtual huddle, to our Black men. Our Black men, our strong, Black, beautiful, hardworking men who have been the figures and pillars of strength, of leadership for many generations in our community. And so tonight, on the Monday, on the day after we celebrated Father's Day nationally, I want to say Happy Father's Day to all those who are fathers, and Happy Father's Day to your fathers. And we know that fathers is very important, especially in the Black community. And we know that Black men for generations have been beat down and looked upon not as much as the strong pillars that we honor them and know them to be. And so we gather here tonight to honor Black men, to hear from our Black men, to hear from some of the leading voices on the in the country on many various issues as it pertains to not only advocating for issues for Black men, but also being present on issues relevant to Black men. And so we dedicate this platform tonight to our Black men, to our leading Black voices. You will hear from various leaders in different communities who are raising their voice and who is really hitting the pavement to be strong, to be present, to be vocal. And so we will hear from various leaders tonight. If you have a question or a comment, we're not saying that we won't hear from the ladies tonight, but if you do have a question or a comment and you want to engage in the discussion, please put your question and comment in the chat section so that we can acknowledge your presence and your contribution to the discussion tonight. So without further ado, let's kick it right off. I do want to pay homage tonight to our founder, Ashley Sharpton, National Action Network's Huddle founder, Ashley Sharpton, who's on with us tonight. Ashley, thank you for your vision and thank you for your leadership. And without further ado, I do want to now introduce, to kick us off with prayer and our Black History fact for the day. Please welcome, is there a Huddle cabinet leader on that's going to do this? Patrice Perry, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Let us pray. Most gracious and wise God, we first come to tell you thank you tonight. God, thank you for your grace and thank you for your mercy. God, on this special Huddle edition, we ask you, God, that every Black male that's on this call, God, that their life will be changed from this youth Huddle Zoom tonight. God, we ask you to always cover our women, but especially our Black men in this dark world, God. We know that you are still the light. Some young man on this call tonight, God, feels discouraged for just being Black. God, give him strength. Hold him up where he's weak. Touch all of our men on this call. God, help them to be stronger and better as they Zoom in every Monday. God, we ask you to touch their households. Give them the strength to be head of their households. Let them know, God, that you are with them no matter what the news shows, no matter what 45 does. God, we know that you are in control. So we ask you right now, God, to be with all of our Black brothers, our men, our fathers, our uncles. God, even be with our founder and president, Reverend Dr. Al Sharpton. It's not easy, God, but we know that you will cover him, and we know you will keep him covered. God, we ask you to bless everyone on this call tonight, that some change will happen. Something will change in their lives to make them want to be better and do better. And this we ask, in your precious name we pray. And we all say, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Patrice.
Black History fact? Do we have one?
Pinnacle's on. Please call Pinnacle.
Pinnacle Garcia, are you on? Vice President of National Action Network's Youth Huddle, to give us our Black History fact of the day.
Hi, yes, I'm on.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you give us the Black History fact of the day?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I can't hear Pinnacle anymore. Pinnacle? Okay. All right. All right, we're just gonna, I don't know what's something's going on with Pinnacle's technical connection, but I'm just gonna keep moving on. Is Trayvon Butler on, our National Action Network's Youth Huddle advisor? Good evening, Trayvon, how are you? You're muted.
I'm good. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm good. How are you? I apologize, but every time someone speaks, there's a big echo going on, so I don't know
Yeah, I hear that
what's going on
too.
with the audio. But
let's just try to move through that and hopefully we can get it fixed. But good evening. I wanted to bring you on because you are one of the advisors of National Action Network's Youth Huddle. And I wanted to ask you to help moderate tonight's discussion as we are talking to various leaders, Black men in the community, various communities who have spoken out on various issues, but also have been prime examples of great men. Leading Black men. And so we will hear from them tonight. I wanted you to help me. Let's kick off the discussion. I don't know if Pinnacle Garcia is still on with us, but we wanted to hear from Pinnacle.
Pinnacle, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here.
All right, good to hear from you, brother.
Good to hear from you too.
You have that Black History fact for us?
Please proceed, guys.
Pinnacle, as a young Black man in America, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your voice. And we know that there are a lot of stigmas in the community, a lot of people and things that go against Black men in America. And we know that you are a young Black man and you are coming of age and you are a conscious young Black man. And you're not only conscious, but you lead in various aspects and various ways. Can you talk to us tonight about how you feel in this day and age being a young Black man? And Trayvon, I don't know if you have any questions, but we just want to kick it off and just start the discussion now tonight.
As a young Black man in society, I feel like I'm not safe in the world. I feel like there's a target on my back, and I feel like as a young Black man, that's kind of scary because you're always taught like everyone's treated equal in school, and you're always taught that even though you are Black, you still have the same opportunities as other people, and I don't think that's really true. I think that even though I am Black and I do go to the same school as some white kids, I don't have the same opportunities as them, which is very unfortunate and very sad. But I do try my best to continue to lead, and I do try my best to, even though that I don't have the same opportunities as them, I still work 10 times as harder as them.
Okay, so with that being said, are there some things that you have done or that you continue to do to sort of overcome those obstacles?
I try to work with other people in my community that are my age and in my school. I try to help them by giving them information on tips like finding a job or working on a resume, or whether it's just like how to do an interview when you're either like dancing or doing a job, because I'm growing up like as becoming a man, and I see my mom and she's helping me and she's teaching me things that are helping me, and I try to pass that on to my friends and to my colleagues at school. And I feel like it's working, and sometimes they're like giving me feedback also, which is great.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. You know, you definitely have our support here, not only at Huddle, but also in the community.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to share before I kind of share my experience?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Pinnacle, as a young man, as a young male of color, growing up in America, do you feel a sense of a lot of tremendous pressure? Do you feel pressure, and then do you feel supported, fully supported in the various ways that you think, or that you feel pressure, that you feel overwhelmed in some aspects? In other words, what is the community doing enough to support you as you are growing and into an adult? Do you feel like the community supports you enough?
Definitely. There are programs like this, such as Huddle, such as NAN. There are programs in my school that are helping me. I do feel support in my schools, and I do feel support in my community. And I'm glad I have that support. I'm glad that I have you, Dominique, and I'm glad I have Trayvon, Ashley, Malaysia, Patrice. I'm glad I have my Huddle family that supports me and shows me unconditional love. They're always there for me. If I have a question, I ask you, Trayvon, Ashley, and I always get a response back. So I do have much support, and I'm very grateful for that.
Trayvon, why don't you share your experience? I know that you are fairly new to National Action Network. I mean, you've been with us for a few years, but not for, since you were a little boy or anything like that. So when did you feel like your activism would be a contribution to who you are as a Black man? And how did you go about that path that you knew that you wanted to raise your voice in a different way?
So for me, I think it actually started right around the age of 16. There were signs prior to that, such as being in school, and when you go through school, whether you're in a classroom, you kind of get those early stages of those signs as far as the type of help that you would get from teachers with a particular problem, or, with a certain circumstance as far as how you want to express yourself or how you can go about being the best version of yourself and trying to get to that point. So I would say right around 16 was at that time, I wasn't doing so good in school, but I felt like I always had the potential to do greater things. So I didn't necessarily have the support of teachers. I think in high school and all 4 years, I probably had 3 male high school teachers. That's going from 9 through 12. So a lot of times, some of the questions that I would ask as far as help and things like that, I wasn't getting the type of help that I was looking for or I thought that I needed. And then also too, I was in a really interesting place because me at 16, both of my parents were really young. So a lot of the stuff that I was seeking out and trying to understand, they could barely help me because they themselves are not, I felt like they wasn't as helpful or in a position to sort of guide me into the space that I needed. So I had a job, I was doing what I was doing, trying to support myself. I actually ended up moving out at 17, but a lot of my experience and my activism actually comes from my own personal experience of how to sort of, take care and support myself. So I always thought, once I really got into a position where I'm good on my end, I could kind of help spread that information or be that sort of mentor to someone that was younger than me or the generation behind me, because I didn't want them to go through what I went through. For example, like when I told my dad that I wanted to go to school and that I actually got into school, number one, he didn't even know that I was, capable of getting into college. So of course, when it came time to pay for it, and I went to school during the recession of 2008. So when it came down to actually, having that conversation, and when I told him how much it would cost or what that financial piece would look like, he looked at me, and the look he gave me was something that I'll kind of never forget. And that's what really kind of invigorated my activism as far as the economic portion of it. Like, how do we get our young men in a position to not only succeed, but be in a position where they are not crippled with resources?
So do you feel like there was a lack of resources, opportunities, access when you were growing up? I mean, what was it that you felt you needed that you didn't have ultimately?
Honestly, I think the resources are there. I just never had the mentors or the support. I think a lot of our men, when they grow up, they don't feel like, they feel very judged, and they feel like people look at them and say, well, they don't feel like they have the potential to do some of the stuff that they're capable of doing or dream about. For example, I'm not going to say this elected official's name, but when I first started coming around, I introduced myself and I told him I had just graduated from school. And, he whispered to me, oh, because I'm all about, that mass incarceration and helping people, with that. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Well, me too. I was like, well, in fact, I actually never been to jail. So I don't,
Wow.
you know what I mean? It's just little stuff like that. And again, I'm not going to identify or reveal who that person was, but it's just small things. I learned this from my grandfather. There's some small things that can go a really long way. And, that right there, that told me where his mentality was. So I can only imagine what some other young Black males have to endure.
Mm. I want to bring into the discussion at this time two gentlemen who have been mentors in their community, respective communities. Reverend Dr. Marquise Ball, who is a minister, pastor, a teacher, a mentor, an influencer, political analyst. I mean, you name it. But Pastor Ball has been involved, and I feel like he is a real symbol of hope, a real symbol of strength in the Black community. And thankfully, he's with us tonight. He works with our Washington, D.C. Bureau for National Action Network, and we're blessed and honored to have him join us tonight for this virtual discussion for National Action Network's Youth Huddle. And then I also want to introduce Dr. Marcus Bright, who is one of the directors for Congresswoman Frederica Wilson's 5,000 Role Model Project in the state of Florida. And he also happens to be my husband. And he's on with us tonight. He's also one who wears many, many hats. I mean, he's a professor, a teacher, a mentor, a political enthusiast. I mean, you name it, Marcus can do it. And he does it. So we are honored to have these gentlemen join us tonight on the discussion as we are talking about mentors and the importance of father figures and mentors in the community. Dr. Bright, can you talk a little bit about, of course, the program that you direct for Congresswoman Frederica Wilson, but about the importance and the need and how it's received in the community by, of course, Black males, to need and to have programs like this accessible in their communities. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as Dominique mentioned, I'm administrator for the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project, and that is a massive dropout prevention and mentorship program with over 8,000 boys. It's just in Miami-Dade County, and probably about 6,000 to 7,000 more in Broward County, Florida, Duval County, and Detroit, Michigan. And I think that it's critically important because if you look at the data, there's no doubt that there's a systemic and a sustained attack on our young Black boys. If you look at the data, there are 700,000 women all across the world incarcerated, all across the world. Just in the United States, there are more than 700,000 Black men incarcerated. So you have more Black men incarcerated in America than women across the world. And what the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence Project is, it's a counter to a system that is designed to lock us up and lock us out. And I believe that the criminal justice, the systemic racism that is embedded in the criminal justice system is linked to economics. The young brother that spoke before me that talked about financing college. A lot of the pressures, the anxiety, the struggles of the Black male in America is rooted in economics. It is rooted in a lack of intergenerational wealth transfers, that we were blocked from slavery to Jim Crow to redlining to the war on drugs to mass incarceration to employment discrimination to a lack of access to capital, all down the gamut. And we have a lot of accumulated disadvantage systemically that puts us almost, it's like you're born down 50 points and the game is to 100. So you got to score 50 in the first half. I mean, just to try to have a fighting chance at succeeding. And you see that a lot of times, hey, going through school, you may think that you're on an equal playing ground, but then like you said, when it's time to pay for college, you don't have the intergenerational wealth transfers. And then I'm part of a generation that was given the advice, hey, go to college. Just go to college and everything will be fine, which may have worked for the previous generation. But for our generation, we have almost an entire generation of folk that may be in debt for life, get this, because they went to college. So you say, hey, go get this MD, go get a JD, go get a PhD. And then you $200,000-$300,000 in debt versus your white counterpart who was able to get that debt free due to inheritance, due to what they call in life in vivo transfers. Then when you get your degree, you think you're gonna have the same economic options and the same job opportunities as your white counterpart. You don't have that. A lot of times you locked out for a number of different reasons. And then they say, hey, it's time to go get you a house. With what money? A lot of times, what your white counterparts won't tell you is that mom, dad, grandparents gave you the down payment to buy a house, to buy a car, to be able to weather economic emergencies. And so you're a problem with a lot of Black males is that they're measuring stick. You're measuring a stick based on you're using an inequitable measuring stick And then that's causing a lot of black male self-image to be degraded and to be down. So, so without being any longer, I know I'll pick back up on it. The 5,000 role models from grades 3 through 12, we do everything that we can to guide and support young men. We try to, as holistic as you can be, you name it, police and youth conferences, health symposiums, one-on-one mentoring, group mentoring, going to museums, college scholarships, the whole gamut. It's, in my opinion, the best vehicle to address the holistic needs of black boys in the United States of America, and it should be implemented in school districts across the country. And I'm thankful to Congresswoman Frederica Wilson for giving me the opportunity to be able to interact with thousands of young men and boys and their families on a day-to-day basis. And so I'm incredibly grateful for that opportunity. I think it's a phenomenal vehicle, but I think that we have, to wrap it up, we face a lot of systemic barriers, and we need organizations like National Action Network to keep opening the doors of opportunity as the 5,000 role models trains and empowers young men to be able to walk through the gates of opportunity.
Amen.
But
so wait,
often,
I want to ask you before you keep going, because before you wrap it up, you hit a few things in a few of the questions submitted, and I want you to basically harp on those. So you named the economic struggle, and I wanted you to name the 3 biggest issues impacting black males, because there's men and boys in America, and how you personally confronting those issues. I know you're working with 5,000 role models, but your personal journey as far as that, because you are a black male in this country. And I wanted to talk about, you kind of hit at it, the black male ego. I would say that the black male ego in America is bruised or even broken. Yeah. And you guys all can stand to correct me. This question is for Marcus, but I also want all of our other speakers to answer this question or to attempt to confront this question. But the male ego, the black male ego, how do you move on every day? Seeing videos constantly of us, of you out being killed, with seeing what happened with George Floyd, 8 minutes and almost 9 minutes on this man's neck for no reason. Absolutely, that could have been anybody. It was not specifically for George. It could have been Bob. It could have been Marcus. It could have been Dr. Marquez. It could have been Stephen Marshall. How do you get over that? They constantly, America's trying to break us, like we're having a march August 28th. Their foot is constantly on our neck. How do you encourage your young people to get past that? How do you encourage yourself to go forward every day? Your father, your brother, your son. How can you encourage us to literally, I know spiritually, but physically and emotionally and financially? How do you keep going?
Okay, so to try to be brief, my 3 are: number 1, economic marginalization. Spend a lot of time on that. Number 2, in terms of the masses of black men, systemic racism in the criminal justice system and the way that we are targeted. And I try to do personally with that exactly what we do for the boys. We try to have as much, because we need to disrupt that entire system. But in the meantime, our boys are still having interactions with law enforcement. And so we try to have as many police officers as we can interacting with our boys, giving them game on how not to fall into different traps and incarceration, and making sure that when in Miami-Dade County, look here, I keep that tie, I keep the role model tie on me at all times, because that's how integrated, that's what kind of relationship that we have. That's how well trained and the kind of credibility that we have with law enforcement and with the young men and with the community. It goes deep. But even me, we try to just do all that you can to avoid being trapped up in that criminal justice system. And then number 3, it is our own self-image, our own definition. One of the things, and I think that was really personal for me, but and this is my opinion, I think that we have millions of black boys right now who are all chasing about 2,000 spots in the athletic or entertainment lottery. And we are investing everything. This was me too. Investing in athletics. I'm not being anti-athletic here, but let me just give this side. We are too many boys are investing everything they have, all their time, all their effort, and all their identity and reason for being and purpose into trying to become one of the 2,000 athletic or entertainment lottery winners. And society mass markets the NBA players, the NFL players, to mask the suffering of the black masses. and we bought in. Our boys have bought in. When the grown man hasn't made it, when his athletic dream has been deferred, then a lot of times all he's living for because of a lack of infrastructure of opportunity is their son. Maybe my son can make it to the league, and then then maybe we can have a better way of life economically that way. And I'm not saying so sports has a place, but we have to look at and evaluate the place that sports plays in our society, because too many times we have bought into the definition that we are only valuable when we're scoring a touchdown or slam dunking a basketball, and we bought into that. So our life is over. Too many brothers' life is over when they don't make it to the league. Jay-Z said, "I've seen hoop dreams deflate like a true thing's weight." And so I've been trying to study the life of George Floyd before the officers' foot was on the net. George Floyd was a standout football and basketball player from the projects of Houston, and society deemed him as valuable as long as he could score touchdowns for Jack Yates High School. But when the athletic dream went, then society said, we have no more use for a big 6'6" black man. We ain't got no more use for you. And I don't know whether or not George bought into that, but he fell prey to, as a black, you can't make a mistake. If you have any kind of criminal record, it's hard to get a job without a criminal record. Most black men in a lot of these cities don't even have a job without a criminal record. So if you have a criminal record, it's harder to get a job. George Floyd was running across the country trying to find a job. That's why he was in Minnesota trying to find a job. He finally got hired as a security guard at the Salvation Army, was paying like $8 an hour. Then he was a bouncer, and COVID-19 cut that off. So he was unemployed and coming back from the coronavirus when he got killed. What infrastructure, we have to ask ourselves, what infrastructure of opportunity did George Floyd have before the officer put the knee in his neck? The knee was already in his neck.
Sir, I must clap. Come on, Marcus Bright. There we go. Dr. Ball.
Dr. Ball. No,
Wow,
Marcus, stay off on mute because we need y'all to start this discussion. The sisters are trying to step away and hear from the brothers. So don't put yourself on mute yet, brother. Take yourself off mute and let's hear Dr. Ball. Pass the ball.
Okay. First of all, thank you all so much for hosting this and inviting me to be a part of this absolutely meaningful conversation. I will send my email gripes and complaints because you all had more to go first. And that was injustice. But nevertheless, no, he's definitely right on point. So to kind of go after your initial two questions, three biggest issues, I would say absolutely economics, education. For those, we kind of know. But undergirding all of those two would be one that I think we may very well miss often, and that is a demographic threat. We are seeing some of the attacks on Black and brown bodies, period, because of a demographic threat. This boils down to the allocation of resources and the problem of our country being rooted in the evil ideology that the white race specifically is supposed to be over and above every other race. And because of that evil ideology, it impacts every other aspect of our country. So it boils down to the allocation of resources. There is a concerted effort to save the privileges and advances of and for one particular race of people. Because of that, it impacts education and who has access to it. I think Trayvon was saying earlier with regard to his access, and when he admitted to someone he had it, a congressional leader or what have you's response was, oh, well, I just assumed that you went to prison first, right? And that's because it was never meant for this particular race of people to really get these advantages. Maybe a few so we can feel good about it, But when too many get it, we come up with different programs to limit the rise of Black and brown people. And that's because if they get this education, some kind of way they're gonna take my job. And so I don't want them to have that. Or if they come across the border, either the southern border or the eastern border, then they're gonna take my job. It's all about the survival and the advancement of one demographic population. And then the economics comes into play with that, which Dr. Bright was sharing. Solely because when you think about this generational wealth piece. So in Washington, D.C., we are experiencing gentrification. I mean, it's on steroids, right? And I remember the other day I was walking down the street and I saw a strange mixture of a pizza place and a bicycle repair tire place. It was just straight, brand new, nice, hip. And I wondered, like, okay, they put those two together. So you had the money though, right? To get this place in a gentrified area to put together the most obscure kind of business, and people don't connect that to, that's because your grandfather's grandfather had this money to pass down because they could purchase a house. Or let me see if I can hit my boy Drew Brees from New Orleans, because your grandfather fought in the war and he came back and was able to get a VA loan that my granddaddy, who fought in the same war, could not get. So you're able to have generational wealth to undergird you. So our problems are really rooted in the survival and advancement of one race of people. So that's three issues: the education, the economics, demographic threat, right? But then, are we bruised as Black men? Are we broken? I'm gonna be honest with you. That's a very hard question to answer, and it's hard because I don't know what it's like to not be.
Ooh, that was heavy.
Since coming to these shores, we've been bruised and broken. That's our norm. We've never been able to operate unbruised, unbroken. We've always had to run a race with a broken leg. We don't know what it's like. And that's purposeful. The interesting piece is, since being in this country, we've had to operate and run and work as broken people, and they still didn't stop us. Now imagine what it would be like if we did not have these injuries, this brokenness. That's the challenge. So because we know that we can't hold them down, we keep trying to. If we let them go, the sky is absolutely the limit. I'm gonna stop. That's just my two pieces.
Amen, sir. Wait, hold on. Pinnacle, our vice president has a question for you.
Okay. How Black men, Black folks are denied resources. We all know that started in slavery. With that in mind, do you support Oh man, absolutely. So I'm working right now on House House Resolution 100 with Congresswoman Barbara Lee, right? So there's already some legislation, House number 40, House Resolution 40, that deals with reparations, but then there are elements that we need with that. One of the challenges that's on my plate right now for the DC Bureau is that we've seen Princeton Theological Seminary admit they're wrong with regards to slavery, which caused the students to push for reparations. We've seen a couple of years ago, Georgetown admit that they sold a couple hundred slaves so that they would not go bankrupt. So we got Georgetown now because they sold slaves from Maryland to Louisiana, my home state. So they were able to admit it. And so they were able to get pushed because of that. So they had this truth-telling piece. Our nation has never, as a government, acknowledged that wrong. And you can't try someone without the evidence. And so they never want to deal with that evidence gathering piece. So I'm all into, we need reparations. We've seen others get it. And if you look at Haiti had to pay reparations when they got Napoleon off their neck. It was like, well, we losing our resources. Or you look at the slaveholders in our country, they got reparations, but the people who were oppressed have not received our reparations. So absolutely in favor of reparations.
Hello, Dr. Ball. I just want to say thank you for coming here. My question is, what exactly can be done to help progress the resources for Black and brown men where you are at?
Great question. I'm gonna hit Chaplain Cole. Yes, I do work with Nia here in DC. So the allocation of resources. So for one, I don't believe in the idea of there's going to be some great savior other than Jesus as a preacher, right? I think we are our best hope. We are our best advocates. One of the struggles that I have is sometimes we don't aid our organizations who are doing this work. We keep reinventing the wheel because we have an HNIC kind of problem. I got to be the head, and if I ain't the head, then I can't support it. So I think for one, we've got to find those organizations which are actively doing the work. For example, we know that Dr. Bright is on the ground doing the work in Florida. I don't have to recreate his program. I ought fund it. I ought to help make sure it's supported. So I think for one, we've got to begin to recognize the organizations that are doing it. Thurgood Fund for colleges, United Negro College Fund. So I think it's seeing those kind of pieces and us undergirding that work. One of our challenges is that we keep spreading our resources too thin, and therefore we're not having the kind of broader impact that we can have. So there are organizations. I'm a part of 100 Black Men. I'm a member of Alpha. And so we do that work as far as giving scholarships, as far as training and mentoring young people. Every Thursday, I have this same kind of Zoom call with young people as we're talking about investing, and we make them walk through a whole investment strategy, and we give them a pool of funds to kind of work with in the silo. And after they do that, they actually get money. So it's things like that I think are absolutely helpful. I believe it was Reverend Sharpton that I heard say one day, we're not looking for better slave owners. We're looking for freedom for our people. And so I'm not necessarily looking for some blonde-haired, blue-eyed person to come save us with their programs. Recognize that we can do it ourselves.
Very well said, Dr. Ball. Very well said. Thank you so much for sharing that. Next, actually, to continue along this discussion, I want to call in Brother Stephen Marshall and Pastor Carlton Lynch. First, I want to start with Brother Stephen Marshall. How's it going, brother? Can you hear me?
He's up all night taking care of that baby. Justice.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Changing Bible.
Yeah, happy belated Father's Day, by the way.
She wanted to join in, but then she got booked for another gig tonight.
All right, we'll continue along the discussion. Brother Stephen, what do you feel are the three biggest hurdles, with Black men? And what do you feel, along with that, how you feel some ways to kind of help with the job opportunity in the Black community, or some ways that we can help overcome the criminal justice system that we currently face?
Well, first, again, we want to yield an honor to those who, in which honor is due, the Huddle leadership under our sister Ashley Sharpton and Dominique. And we do bring you greetings from the National Action Network, where Reverend Al Sharpton is our president and founder. And we thank him in his absence for giving us even the platform, the opportunity to be under such an organization that we can flourish as young people. I think the number one, first of all, I must go to docs on the call. Dr. Ball and Dr. Bright so eloquently laid it out. I am from the University of the Civil Rights Movement, so I don't have a doctorate that I earned. But however, I think everything that they laid out is poignant, and I think it's actually, it should be documented as a blueprint in which how we obtain the things that we talked about. But I think if we do not have, so to your question, I want to stay on course. The number one thing for me is the survival of the Black man. I don't think you can obtain any of the things which were mentioned so eloquently by my brothers if we do not ensure that Black men can even live and survive and exist in our communities. If you look at, and we know George Floyd's name because he is now sort of his name is sort of, what we're using as the launching pad for this movement that we're seeing all over the country and all over the world. But there's countless Black men and women that have been killed recklessly by police. And if we want to be exactly transparent, some of them have been killed by ourselves. And so I think, number one, we must focus on the actual, the ability or inability for Black men to survive. It's not often that I leave my house with my family that I don't think about my interactions with the public. Am I gonna make it back home? And so I think most Black men, we walk around with that sort of level of anxiety that causes us to focus on surviving rather than thriving. And so you cannot thrive unless your surviving part is secured. And I think once we do that, everything that Dr. Ball, and I don't want to be redundant, and Dr. Bright said and laid out are achievable. Some of us are grown big men in our fear of our lives when we walk out of our door. And so if we don't deal with the systematic white supremacy and racism by way of policing and violence that we inflict on ourselves, I don't think none of what we've talked about is even reachable if Black men are not given the equal opportunity to live like our white counterparts. To your question about jobs, I really have an unorthodox sort of ideology on how that's obtained. I think resources are allocated in areas and communities in which they are chosen. And so it's not by accident that you have funds by way of elected officials that go to certain places and people, or you have sprinkles of it in Black neighborhoods where you get people or young boys that are thriving by way of education opportunities, by way of opportunities of economic growth and development, and then some neighborhoods don't have it. That means somebody is not doing their job, period. And so discretionary funds have a systemic racial undertone attached to that as well. And so when you can invest millions of dollars in Riverdale part of the Bronx, but you don't invest anything in the south side of the Bronx, that's by choice. That's not by disparity. It's by economic or economic injustice by way of racism, period. I don't have any eloquent or sophisticated, dissertation to explain that. It's simply design. And the problem with that is, and this is not this is a family discussion, so I feel free to speak freely. The problem with that is some of those who are carrying the water of racism look like us. And so until we even deal with ourselves, I don't think any of that is achievable. So safety for Black men, the fact that we are less likely to return to our families simply because of the color of our skin, and or those who are in charge that our parents have invested in to make it possible for them to be where they are. They must reciprocate that in return and reinvest in our community.
Can you speak to, you said some of the racism that goes on in the world, they look like us. It's done by people that look like us. Can you speak to that a little bit and talk about, I don't want to beat up on our own, but we do have to confront Black on Black issues as well, because that's also a part of the issue.
Yeah. Yes, I think part of healing is revealing, right? And so Black men, the part where Pastor Ball said we are bruised and broken, some of us have evolved into being still those who work for the slave master by way of being in political office. And so it's not because we're beating up, but some of them have the lack or the melanin that's identified to be with us, but their spirits have the pigmentation of their spirits by way of their works are opposite of the Black culture. And so that's a fact. And so when we send these people, and it's really handed down from repetitious ignorance. And so when I first registered to vote, those in my community told you that you should just vote Democrat straight down, right? Although those same Democrats were cutting deals with developers even before gentrification was a word that people could, just pull out a hat and say now. Gentrification happened way back in Brooklyn in the 90s when they said Nehemiah houses were available, but those balloon mortgages, in fact, in a 10-year time, actually removed people because they couldn't afford it when they first purchased it. And so that was at the hands of Black folks. And so if we're going to be 100% honest and transparent, some of us have to be pulled to the carpet, pulled out of those seats that our parents have sent. You have to realize if everybody would just do their homework about even the congressional representation in your neighborhood, most of the Congress people, besides AOCs of the world that's been there a couple of years, most of them have been there 30 years, 40 years, and some 50 years. Look at the scorecard of your community. And so Big Mama and Uncle Joe, they won't affect that change. And so I always encourage people that you should not only run for office because based on what you see and you don't receive in your community, but you should hold them accountable. It shouldn't be that they can sponsor block parties and give us hamburgers and hot dogs that are killing us, but they can't tell you why there's no after-school programs, right? They shouldn't be able to come to our churches around election time and talk about what they're going to do in the community when your scorecard should be shown to us on the regular. What have you done for the broken school system in our neighborhood? Again, I live in New York City. We have the most segregated school system in the country. How is that? How? And then international commerce comes through the streets of New York City and then gets disseminated to the rest of the world. And so again, accountability is not bashing. Accountability is calling to order that in which we can change based on our influence. And the fact that we have the right to change those folks. Nobody promised you when you voted for your congressperson, whoever in your district, that they were to go there to stay without bringing something back home. That's no other culture would accept that.
Nah, you hit it on the nail, Minister Marshall. I guess my question is then, we've heard about, the system and how the system has affected Black men. I guess my next follow-up question to that is, then what is it that we can do as Black women, as Black allies? Like, what is it that we can do that you feel we're not doing, or that is a lack of support or assistance that we can be doing to help strengthen and encourage and lift our Black men up?
Well, I appreciate the question, but I'll be 100% honest. I don't have...
Anyone can answer it, all right, but I would like for you to...
All right. Mine will be real short. I'm not gonna make excuses for Black men. Black women have been everything down to a doormat that we walked on when we felt like we could, right? And so Black women have always been the crutch for Black men. They have always ushered in civilization. They've always taken care of us. And so for me, I just when I looked at the title of Dear Black Man, You Matter, what's troubling to me is that at some point we got to convince some of the brothers that they matter, which is a problem, because the natural order of things is that the man, and in particular the Black man, supposed to be on all fours at all times, on the square, to make sure that not only Black women can support us, but they have something to support. Supporting doesn't mean carry you. That's out of the order of God. So I'm not looking for my wife to carry or to support me in the sense that I need to in the midst of my identity crisis. So we need to correct that first, right? I think women have done their part. The whole slogan about women saying that I'm a mother and father came from the inability of men to stand up and lead. And I'm a man and I'm saying it. And so I think if we don't talk about that and make it clear that Black women in particular have done all that they can do twice, I think it's time for us to really return home and step up to the plate and be the men that God called us to be. We have the power to create. We have the power to speak things and they happen. If Black men would walk the street, I think violence would decrease. I think if Black men returned home and really picked up the mantle of being leaders of their families, and I'm not talking about intimacy, I'm talking about actually taking care of the community, because we have a system as well. We have a system in our communities in which we've abandoned. There was, again, I grew up in Brooklyn in the 90s. We always had homelessness, but there was nobody that was hungry because Black men made sure the community was taken care of.
So I would agree in large part with my brother, Mr. Marshall, solely because I have to absolutely say Black women have literally been holding it down. So there is not something else that Black women can do. I think part of the challenge goes back to the question of brokenness. Black men have been intentionally broken. That goes back to the institution of slavery and the intentional effort of breaking Black men. So if you look at, as my brother Dr. Bright was saying earlier, just the rise, the rapid increase in the prison industrial complex, right? That's not accidental. So when you see so many absentee fathers, what's this young lady's name? Candace, who is all over social media. Oh, Candace Owens.
Candace Owens, Lord.
Oh yeah, I know her name. I just didn't really want to say it. I want to act like I kind of forgot. But no. So, but she is right in talking about the 74% of single parent households run by women, which is true, absolutely true. But we don't get underneath the why. Did Black fathers just disappear? Was it a rapture that we didn't know about? Or have they just been locked up or choked to death by police officers, right? So it's things like that we've got to begin to recognize. Some of this absenteeism, some of this brokenness is systemic. It's an effort to dismantle and destroy the Black family. And that goes back to that demographics piece or what have you. And it creates a cyclical effect with regard to our young Black men and women now not graduating and also going right into that same prison industrial complex. It is a system that is working. So I think part of it is not necessarily that we need more Black women to undergird us or carry us, but rather than look at the symptom, we've got to get past that to deal with the cause. The cause is absolute systemic issues that are intentional in breaking Black families, period.
I think that's dope. I want to go to Pastor Lynch. I know he's been waiting too, but I think what you're saying is great. I think we need to go past that. And once we identified what the system is, I do believe, because I'm critical of us, I won't get up off this, I do believe that look at the numbers. There's not enough Black men voting to tear down the system, right? There's not enough Black men infiltrating the education system to be educators to tear down that system. And so I think what you're saying is on, but we must be accountable that you can't spend a lot of time talking about, and I'm a student of history like you, Pastor Ball, and I think that has to be the reference or the point in which we go forward. But there's a lot of us making excuses. Pastor Lynch, can we go to you real quick?
Dominique, let me say, I have never, ever heard a woman ask that question.
Really?
First of all, never. What can we do? I think for a man to actually try to answer it, I think is a sad indictment on manhood. Because I think when you think about it, the only time the African American man actually shows up in our day and in our time is when it's something that can benefit us, not the next generation. I was reading today before we came on, and I know y'all are preacher kids, so y'all don't mind the Bible. It was about this guy named Bartimaeus who was being carried. And I like what you said, Bob, because too many times, brothers, really, if we want to have a real conversation, we want to be carried. We want somebody to take us somewhere. You think about all through the Bible, there was men always being laid somewhere, placed in a certain position in order to get help or to get healing or to get deliverance. But this guy, Bartimaeus, when he heard the help was coming, he began to scream. And I don't think there's enough African-American men. You think about the protest. I just left Louisville, Kentucky. It was predominantly women. Even in my city, it's predominantly women. Where are the protectors at? Where are the people that ain't gonna allow nobody to touch our sisters? And then you check this out, Marshall, that after he heard that help was coming, he began to scream. And 45 was on the other side and told him to be quiet, but he kept screaming. And so the reality is, I think on so many occasions, we just have a whole bunch of brothers that's just waiting, Marshall, for somebody to do it for us. I think we ought to turn this platform in an hour of just repenting and saying, I remember years ago, Ashley, seeing you in a picture with handcuffs, getting ready to get on the bus. I think that's a sad indictment that there wasn't a black brother standing next to you, at least saying, if you go, I go.
Mm.
And so,
There were a few, they just weren't next to me. I must speak for them. There were a few, but that one, I got you, Doc. I understand it.
Come on, Doctor.
Well, they should have gotten the camera. And so I'm just thinking, you know, when you really think about it, Dominique, I appreciate the question, but I think Black men, how can we answer it with a clean heart and with clean hands? Because I believe that you all are really, in a sense, are still yet paving the way.
You said that, sir.
That's why Lynch don't get invited nowhere.
Let me quickly.
I think that the discussion is hot, and I just want to add on a couple more voices to lend in their voice to the discussion. I think it's dynamic thus far. Thank you, gentlemen, for your voice and for speaking up. We're going to continue this discussion. I do want to bring on Brother Antoine Brown. Are you on, sir? Good evening.
Yes, I am. Good evening.
All right. And Brother David Brown. David, are you on? Another one of National Action Network's Youth Huddle Advisors. David?
I'm on.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Yes, I'm on. You hear me?
Yes. So we want to continue
Evening.
this discussion. We definitely wanted to continue this discussion. And Pastor Lynch, we enjoy hearing from you. So if there's anything else you need to add or comment upon some of the questions, some of the commentary that's already been brought to this conversation. But I do want to bring these other two brothers in, to hear their voice, hear from them, and to speak if they want to join in on the conversation. Please do. Either one of you.
So I could take the lead and just maybe start with some of the three biggest.
I saw you speaking, but you were muted, so you were like,
I know.
I'm gonna come right to you, brother, and let's share some of that passion in the discussion.
Right. So I'm gonna speak more so like when I think about my story, I would say the biggest threat to the Black man right now is corporate discrimination. Because you could do everything right. You could go to college, you can make it through a bad community. You can go to college, get your degree, and then go to the next level and get a job. But then once you get in the job, you find yourself out of place and then also once you're Black, you're automatically a mystery to white people in the workplace. So it's like you have to learn how to interact with white people on a totally different level. When you grew up, you never had white people growing up around you all your life, and then in college you just had white people as your peers. Now you have white people in positions of power who directly impact whether or not you have a successful career or not. So I think that's probably the biggest hurdle, is just like helping youth who do make it out and do get to that next level, helping them navigate the white collar workforce. Like that's and one thing that I'm doing is I volunteer with iMentor, where I help students. I help tutor them, mentor them. But even then, that's only one student. You know what I mean? It's gonna take, it's only one student. And then the second issue I think is is a lack of financial literacy that creates barriers for financial freedom. So a lot of times we come out, again, Black people going to school, coming out of school, like these are people who are doing everything right. And once you come out of school, you just don't understand credit. You don't understand financial instruments. You don't understand what a financial security is. You don't understand what savings is. You don't understand how to build savings, how to build wealth, how to start building wealth. And then also you have these apps, these Robinhood apps, these Charles Schwab's apps, that are predatory in the sense where they sell financial securities to the general population. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna lose your money. And that's a direct transfer of wealth from Black people to white people, because they're the ones who know what they're doing. And then the last issue that I think that is the biggest issue amongst Black men is police brutality. At this point, police are an evolutionary threat to the Black man, because I can, again, do what I'm supposed to do. Like when society tells me to do, society tells me, go to school, go to class, even though we have a poor quality education, me, myself, I graduated from high school. I did everything right. I graduated from high school, but I just didn't learn. I was never taught enough math. I ended up having to take remedial courses. So now it's not even my fault, but the public school system just didn't give me the tools that I needed to succeed on the next level. So then, like I said again, you make it through all of this, get married, get a household, and then a cop kills your kid. Now who am I gonna transfer wealth to?
Talk about it.
You know, so those are the three biggest issues I think are facing us. And I understand that there's a lot more that Black people need to do, like especially us young Black professionals. I think there's a lot more that we need to do, but I also think that we need to stop the finger pointing and we need to stop wagging the finger like, oh, you need to do more. Because the fact that we even are here as young Black professionals means that we are not, we're anomalies. Like right now, we're anomalies, and we're not organized, we're not guided properly, and a lot of Black men are scared. I could go outside, like there's so like going outside is a real complex. Just going outside, I can be killed. I'm trying to go to work. Who knows what type of day I'm gonna have at work? So my boss might not like Black people.
Right.
Like where I would like there's corporations that have departments where it's known, don't go to this department. This department is not for Black people. There's no Black people working it. Like, and if, let's say, what if that department has to do with my career trajectory? What if I have to work in this department to get that promotion? Like, what are my options? You know what I mean? So it's a lot of different, it's a combination of little inequalities that snowball into a vast inequality and economic system of oppression that impacts young Black professionals who are the ones who need to lead. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's just my little.
I don't mean to interrupt, but you touched on something, and I know Pinnacle, you have a question, but this I just have to bring this up. You touched on fear, right. And there's a fear that all of us have as Black people have, but then there's also courage and anger, and all of that comes from that. How do you teach young people, especially young Black boys, to basically teach them to avoid dangerous situations, but also make sure they're not cowards? Because every fight, you have to choose your battles. I don't want, it's easy, it's triggered. They're killing us, like you just said, all day, every day, in every form of the way they're stepping on our necks. So how do we teach our young people not to be afraid, but to also be smart about this battle? And this is not just for Antoine, this is for you, Pastor Lynch, this is for you, Dr. Marcus, David, Minister Stephen, whoever would like to address that, because it's real, fear is real.
All right, so
one thing, I'll just say one last thing is being born and raised in New York City, mm-hmm. You inherently have a lot of animosity towards the NYPD. Like, because from stop and frisk right. to just random police encounters, it has been a disaster, and it has been unacceptable the way the NYPD has treated people. They have held themselves above the law, and they have not been held accountable at all for a very long time. So a lot of times you just have a lot of young people who just want a chance to voice their dissatisfaction. That's what it really is. Now, in terms of like doing it in a way that doesn't make you look like a coward so that you can survive, it's all about teaching our young people about opportunity and opportunity cost. What are you giving up in order to interact with the police in the way that you want to interact with them? Right? Because if you go to jail, if you get arrested in a protest and you go to jail, you might not have a job to come back to. So it's like, yeah, you angry. And I had to deal with that too. It's like, I'm angry. I'm just as angry as you are. But I know, like, I can't lose my job. So unfortunately, I need to leave this protest. You know, although I did protest, I need to leave at a certain time because I got to get back home. You know what I mean? It's just all about teaching that opportunity, because like what opportunity are you giving up by doing what action you want to do right now? And that's what we need to teach to our young Black men, young Black boys who are turning into men. But also we need more young Black professional men who are between 22 and 32 years old, who did the right thing and did what they were supposed to do, and honestly had some Black privilege, because having two parents is a Black privilege. straight up. And people who had that privilege and got out need to go to these schools in the communities and volunteer in any way that they can. And it's a shame that I've gone to volunteer sessions and I've seen 5 Black men and 20 to 30 white individuals volunteering to mentor our Black youth. That is a shame. If you go to Howard and you're coming to New York because you want to further your career, how could you not go to a public school and just do something to volunteer? How can you not take your degree? Like if you go to school in marketing, teach some kids about marketing. You go to school for computer science, teach a kid about computer science, teach someone about what you went to school for so that they can just learn some type of higher education. Like, or volunteer. Like, how can you not give anything back? And that's the problem. We have a lot of young Black professionals who did the right thing. And in terms of society, they're the perfect victims. These are the people who, when these Karens come attack them, when these people weaponize 911 to try and call the police on them, these are the people who society looks at as they're the victims and they take our side. So we have to do more, and we're not doing enough. But that's all I'm gonna say.
So question,
Go ahead, David.
I have more. I just don't want to keep.
No, that's okay.
So I'm gonna piggyback on everything that everybody said. So this is the first thing that I've noticed that I have to deal with. I work in a school. I work with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders daily. So the thing that they're lacking is self-respect. So I hear what everybody just said about, what we're doing about going to a school. A lot of Black men don't want to deal with kids because kids don't know how to act. A lot of Black men, if you don't have a kid, you don't have the patience. A lot of young kids don't know how to talk to adults. A lot of kids, excuse my language, tell you to suck my to your teacher. How can you tell a Black teacher to suck your private parts? How can she function with the classroom when you telling her, when you got to come in there, you got to intervene? He's up out of his seat telling her all kind of suck his body parts, and you got a girl chiming in. I get all of that, but it's self-respect. A lot of these men don't take the time to do real hardcore work. It's difficult to work in the school. A lot of men lose their patience working in school. A lot of men lose their jobs working in school. How many times can you be told to suck your private part in the school? Losing your patience. I've seen a lot of kids, Black men, Black strong men, educated men get fired because they have got tempted and they got tested and they put hands on kids because they don't learn how to use self-control. So that's an issue. It starts within the school. The kids are disrespectful and nasty. So it starts at that. Everybody's saying a role model, but where does it start? Where do we leave from? In the school, it's hard. You have to go through an investigation to get, not an investigation, you have to go through a whole process to get a mentor. A lot of these mentors, they don't stick. A lot of the kids, like Dr. Bell said, are broken. A lot of kids are brokenhearted. A lot of the 8th graders, 6th graders are upset and they're angry. They bang on the wall. That's brokenness. Why are you banging on walls for? Why can't you communicate what's going on with you? Why can't you communicate and tell your teacher what's going on? They don't have anybody at home to talk to. So when they come to school, they look for attention. So who can we get to lead them people in the school for attention? I mean, I try to do what I can do, but it's hard when you have it's 6, 7, and 8, when it's about 300 and something kids. So it's a leadership role. It takes more than that than just saying, hey, we need to do this. We need really hands-on action, because the Black kids are messed up. They're really messed up. It's a problem when, the police are supposed to protect you, but it's a problem when you saying F the police. That's a problem. How you tell F the police? I don't care what you say. You need the police in these situations. If you get in a car accident, you need the police report to file your accident for your insurance company, whatever the case may be. You get into an accident, you need the police, F the police. That's their mentality from these young people, us who's supposed to be leading them the right way. We're not leading them how we're supposed to be leading them. That's the real factual. That's reality. We're not.
Right,
but
let's also recognize that these are the same policemen who are white supremacists on the low too. So this is who we're keeping the same energy that we're giving to them. We wouldn't be saying F them if they weren't slamming us to the floor. Like, we are only going off of what we see on phone video. Like, I've been in a situation where I got pulled over and 3 cops pulled guns on me and my friends straight up. Like, they just walked up to the car with guns. So, like, when it comes to F the police, I get it. It's a very disgusting way to voice your dissatisfaction.
Okay, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt both of you, but I'm just saying, this is a part of the trauma. I feel like this is the trauma that we're seeing literally unfold before our eyes. And you're talking about issues in the school system, David, and you're absolutely right. There are some young people that are completely disrespectful, and there are parents who need to do a better job around that. And there's issues around the household and what goes on in the household. And there's issues about Antoine, what you're saying as far as the cops treating us aggressively. Everything y'all are saying is absolutely correct. but I don't want us to get lost in throwing the mud. I don't want us to get lost in underlining. We know those issues. How do we get past that? How do we
can I chime in a little bit here?
I think
Also, wait, Ashley. I also want to full disclosure that some of these things that are coming up in discussion is not a generalization. I saw Jabari's comment in the chat, but these are more so personal experiences that our brothers are having and feeling, and they're sharing. So I just want us to, they're not experts on these issues that they're talking about, but they're
Personal
sharing
experience. Good point,
their personal experiences. So we just want to respect that.
And Derek, you didn't
and good
speak
point,
yet. I
Ash.
think that
That was a
address
good
that
point
as well.
too,
You haven't
how do we?
spoken, and you're.
I'm like Ashley. What's the remedy? I don't want to hear all the pain. What's the remedy?
We need the remedy. So Derek, you can help us start that part of the discussion.
No, let Marshall go. I'm gonna tap in because I got a lot to say. But let Marshall.
Okay.
Me too.
You're chilling too.
I think, and this is only my little investment in the conversation. I think part of the remedy is that in fact we do know what the problems are, but we can't get frustrated when the problems are revealed. A lot of people say they don't want to hear the problem. Not enough people are talking about the problem. You often retain sometimes what you hear the most, and we shy away from the problem because it also opens wounds of the victims of the problem. So I get it. I think there's multi layers of responsibility. To David's point, education for me starts on the block. It starts on the stoop before you enter an institution on how you should speak to women, right?
It starts at home, Marshall, not the street.
Well, I said the block because some of our homes are broken.
Home and the block is two different things, Marshall.
Okay. All right. When you have your piece to explain what you mean. But what I'm saying is that when I grew up in Brooklyn, Black men were on the block making sure that other Black boys didn't do what David was explaining. And so that's what I mean by it. There's the other component, going back to the conversation of fear, and Pastor Ball and Pastor Lynch don't get upset with me, but I remember when adults were protesting when I was coming up, there was a vast majority and a large presence of pastors and clergy on the street to make sure that those police officers were held accountable. Did it always work? No, because they beat up pastors as well. I don't see the response of urgency responding to the precincts when people are getting locked up like they used to. There's no way that Jamel could get beat up by the cops and Jamel's grandmother goes to Second Cornerstone Baptist Church and that pastor doesn't respond. And so I think there's a lot of stuff that we got away from. And I think Pastor Ball said about reinventing the wheel. That is the most wasteful, waste of time that we can do when people are really struggling. And so, again, I'm not pointing fingers or anything like that, but there is a lot we can go back to doing. When I grew up in Brooklyn, again, neighborhood watch wasn't women, right? We had men on the street making sure that even if they were selling drugs, that the generation behind them didn't do that. That they wasn't disrespecting their parents and disrespecting people that couldn't happen. And if it did, Pastor Ball would take me to my mother's house and tell her what I did, and my mother wasn't saying, "Well, Pastor Ball, why are you bringing my son here?" I mean, there's a disconnect because I think there's, again, going back to Dominique's question in the beginning, there has been a role reversal where men have to really, and again, it's not a point of a finger, but we really have to take a position in our communities and really stand firm on our principles and making sure, our children know what to say and not being disrespected or disrespectful before they even enter the educational system.
I think all this being said is rooted with one of the questions, that is that brokenness and that bruise. Even what was shared here, we are literally just seeing the open wounds. Both statements these brothers were making were absolutely true, and even they were speaking their own truth. But part of it is because of that, the bruising, the brokenness, right? So we are where we are, not accidental. What the students say, the fact that the parents aren't there, we need parents to be more involved. If I was screwed up as a parent, what do you want me? You can tell me to be more involved, but I think I am. I taught my child to go cuss you out. Like I'm doing what I was conditioned to do, right? So I think we have to begin to recognize this is a perpetual kind of thing. I saw this in DC in starting after school programs, and as education was happening, I helped one family get funding, right? And try to tell the grandmother not to waste the funds on new clothes. But she didn't know any better. She didn't know what it meant to own. And so she didn't even know how to go forward. And so what did she do? Go spend the money on new clothes. That's because that's all that she's been taught to do. To tell me to do better, but not tell me how to do better, isn't really helping me. So I think for one, even these isolated situations can be stretched to this farthest extent. And we see that this is a systemic issue. The only way I think we have this mass change, from my perspective, is the country has to view it as a national issue. Let me see if I can give us an example, because we create national issues. One that was created recently was an opioid national issue, right? So they was able to find ways to do it. We've got to begin to see that the crisis in the Black community is systemic, and until we have a national approach that deals with things like early childhood education, it deals with things like parenting, which deals with things like access to jobs. Don't tell me to be a better parent when I can't give them oodles and noodles, much less a full course meal, because I'm moving from state to state to get a job and trying not to be choked at the same time, but you want me to help my child with math that I never got either. So it's these kind of systemic things that keep boiling over. And until we have a national approach, which involves funding and resources to fix it, we're going to keep having these little spats that doesn't bring about a real solution, I think.
Hey, Ashley, you said your question was, what's the solution? And listening to everyone talk, I don't think it's a one-shot approach. I don't believe it's this or it's that. And I believe it's the parent. I believe it's the principal. I believe it's the pastor. I believe it's the prosecutor. I believe it's the protester. You know what I mean? I think it's not just one, but I think it's all. And I think because it's all, we're going to need a Bright to inform us about education. And I think we're going to have to pull on each other. And I heard you, Marshall. One reason why we can't find the solution is because everybody is in multiplicity of places trying to do their own thing. I don't have a problem with coming to this platform and just listening. One of the key things, I think one of the solutions is that we haven't taken our time to even know what the problem is. And so while we're trying to figure out all of these different solutions, I'm the solution. I have to be involved. I don't think I got time to say it was her, it was him. You know, I think that I am a part of the solution. So what you're looking for, we really are that.
Well said. Sorry, I was muted. Well said. You definitely said that, but that's also a part of it. We need an agenda for our Black men, those who are not on this platform, those who don't want to sit and listen to people talk for 2 hours. Something easy, something that you can write and address the issues, but we have to start addressing the root. Minister Stephen says something important to me about accountability. Yes, there's brokenness and there's trauma. Yes, it is constantly, and yes. Dr. Ball said that about being conditioned to that. But those who know better or see it better or may know how to deal with it better, we have to do a little more as well. We have to be able to let those lean on us, those who are broken, and get past it. Not get past it, but address it and confront it. I think part of it is, like you said tonight, is talking about it with others. But this is definitely not the fix or end at all. I feel like it's honestly just the beginning. And there's so many, all of you have different platforms and all of you do different things in life, but all of us coming together to help Black men specifically, because we're going to do Black females as well. We're going to have another panel in regards to this, but just to specifically work around the issues confronted tonight. What is the solution that we can say? What is there something that we can actively work on and leave from this to do to get to hold each other accountable tonight? Can we start with that?
I think the number one action is to commit to actually doing action, right? So we could discuss all of which our different opinions about what the solutions and the problems are. I just want to add that I agree that the trauma and all that stuff is going on, but there's been no more trauma than those who were bitten by dogs on the MS Curtis Bridge. But they did something about it. All right. So if you neglect the fact that you refuse to study those who've overcome before us, that is not has nothing to do with white supremacy. That's not holding the mantle of your history and carrying that mantle to make sure that oppression is still of today is still reversible. And it's always been like that. This is not the first time we've been in oppression in a traumatic situation. And that's not to, to shut down or negate the fact that Pastor Ball and others were making, because that's vital. We do need to talk about that. As men, we don't want to talk about what hurts us and what, our brokenness and all of that stuff. But this has been done before, right? And so I think the first thing is we need to commit, like real tangible, not saying it with your words. On Thursday night, 5 of us are going to go out to the block that we don't want to walk on and present something to those young people that are tangible. We all have resources and connections in our church, but the problems is that we also have segregation in our own communities, right, in which we want to help certain people. And so when we invest in the select few that are receptive to our investments, that ain't even Christ. And I'm only using that because I'm a minister. And the fact of the matter is that those in the choir don't need choir lessons. It's the person that's afraid to sing that we need to teach the songs.
I have a question. You talked about resources. Some of those resources can come from elected officials. So with there being many conversations about voting and with this being a primary election year, why is voting relevant to you? And what are some of the things that the people that are running for elections have said to secure your vote?
That's directed at me?
Okay. That's directed for you or anyone.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Does one of our panelists want to answer Pinnacle's question? That was
yeah, I'll do it.
Go ahead.
Great. I thought you was trying to go ahead, Dr. Bright.
Okay, yeah, I'll tie it in voting and how it relates to economics. And also Ashley's point about a tangible step. And this is something that I'm gonna do. I moderated last week a Miami-Dade County Commission debate for the local county commission. And they have a $9 billion budget. And I did the background research, and Black people in Miami-Dade County pay taxes like everybody else, but get less than 1% of the contract. And so I'm gonna stay on that issue. So I challenge all of you in whatever municipality you're in, you're a tax-paying citizen. What percentage of contracts do Black people get? And then how many Blacks are getting hired by those that get the contracts? And if it's an issue of capacity, if they say, well, we can't find any qualified Blacks, then let's do some work on the capacity building side. But if it's an issue on access, let's commit to that issue, because as much as we talk about economics, that's the best place to start, I think, right there with a huge pot of money that can be used to jumpstart Black business owners and to give those people, brothers that desperately need jobs. One issue in Miami is, hey, if you get drug charge when you're 18, 19, 20, something on your record, you can't get a construction job. They're doing construction all over the place. But they'll give a construction job to somebody who got here last week from such and such country. And I'm not trying to be anti-immigration, but we have to have a level of fairness, and we're being locked out economically. And let me just say this too. As we talk about the Bible, I had to pull the Bible out over here with the resonance. Let us not forget, as we beat up on Black men, about the book of Job, because it's easy for a lot of people to say, Black men ain't doing this, Black men ain't doing, you should be doing this and this and this. When you have a job, when you have health insurance, and you can say, hey man, I worked hard for my job. I know a lot of people in Miami right now, executives, they worked hard at Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, worked hard at Carnival, worked hard at Norwegian, worked hard at Hilton Hotel, worked hard at all of that stuff. Job gone, everything gone. And so when Job, a lot of folks that talk bad and bash and would rather sanction Black men and support them, they got a hedge fence of protection around it. But how many of us, and how many people who, how many of those who are around us would still support you and still hold you in the same esteem if you lost everything. If you didn't have a dime to contribute, but your integrity, but your character, but your presence, but your support. So how many, let's do some soul searching too, and not attach our value to anything materialistic, but attach our value to what's inside. Reverend Sharpton said, those who define you can confine you and push you to the margin. And so how many of us, if they take everything, can be like Job and say, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away.
Said that, Doc.
That's the name of the Lord.
Very, very good.
That.
So here's my take on the voting piece. It goes back to demographics. I think for one, Black folk in general, we gotta do a better job knowing the rules of the game. My son Nathan loves to play Monopoly. It's almost like jumping into the middle of Monopoly without knowing the rules of the game, and you're just trying to watch your friends see what they're doing, but you don't really know what the rules are. And when you mess up, everybody else in the game tells you how you messed up and what it's gonna cost you. That's kind of how Black folk are, I think, in general in the country. We gotta know the rules of the game, particularly when it comes to how America works. America is not a democracy. America is a representative democracy. We are a republic, and the numbers absolutely matter. And one of the reasons there's a concerted effort to lock up Black and brown people is because we don't want your vote to count. Okay, let's go back. Because even before that, right? When Black folk were the free laborers, they wanted you to count, but you just couldn't vote because they recognized that those numbers mattered because America was founded as a representative democracy. And because of that, we need Black folk being counted in the census because that impacts how many representatives you're going to have, and it impacts how much of the billions of dollars they're going to allocate every single year from the federal government that's going to hit your community. But then we need Black folk going to vote because our numbers matter. If that were not the case, if they didn't mind you going to vote, then why did Kingdom have to march for it? If they didn't mind you going to vote, then why are they locking folk up? And when you go to prison, they take your right to vote forever. I mean, so we got to think about some of those things, right? So that's because they recognize, one of the reasons they want to build walls and things like that is because they are afraid that more folk that vote differently will begin to vote in ways that they don't like. And the way they control the entire system now is by voting. The way they control education, the way they control healthcare, the way they control the criminal justice system, the way they control economics is because they are the ones who are in the offices to write the policies, to change the rules of the game whenever they see fit. But if we vote more, we vote them out, and the numbers begin to sway in our direction, then we can write better rules of the game. So voting is absolutely essential.
Well said. Thank you.
Yes, I must echo that. Well said.
Would anyone else like to answer the question?
I think that voting, I just wanted to say my piece on my opinion on voting. I think it's relevant because, again, I think it's the most efficient way to drive change from a fiscal policy perspective. When it comes to but also we have to know what we are voting for, what we would like to see, and we have to stop waiting for politicians to tell us what we want. We need to be able to say, hey, here's some common sense legislation that I think is appropriate and makes sense. Like a perfect example is we have millions of people unemployed, and we have a vast amount of jobs that are unfilled and open. So there's a clear skill gap in the unemployment market. So why don't we just, since we're giving corporations tax breaks anyway, why not give them an extra tax break to just hire an individual who is low income, who has no to some college education, and just train them to do these jobs anyway? Because it's already been proven that what you learn in college doesn't directly translate to what you're going to do at the job anyway. So corporations would probably gladly take a tax cut, directly hire, and spend 6 months training. An individual wouldn't have to go to school for years and take on debt. And it's a win-win for everyone. But no one's really thinking about what is some common sense legislation that I think individually would make sense. We are just waiting to hear, oh, what will Bernie tell us we need? What will Biden tell us we need? We need to know what we want, what we think will work. And then from there, politicians can meet us halfway. Okay, well, this isn't reasonable. This is what I can and can't do. That and yeah, that's just my piece.
William Allen just wrote, "We are the politicians, claim our power." Can you speak to that, William?
I certainly can. Good evening, everybody, and thank you, my little sister. Let me just say this. We sometimes speak about politicians in the third person. I'd like for us to change that. I really believe that we need to claim our power, and therefore you're right. We need to lead those in office with an agenda, and we need to monitor this and making sure that that agenda is implemented. You know, the worst thing to do for our community with politicians is just to go vote for them and forget, and then leave them alone. Because the real estate industry, the finance industry, and the lobbyists, they are at our politicians' door every single day. So we got to do the same thing. We got to make sure they're reporting to us and that we're staying on top of this kind of stuff. In fact, I just got off a phone call. I'm doing my nightly calls, crisis calls. So I got off the phone with a lady in Detroit, Michigan. And she said, the police was called to her home because she had some gas in her garage, and cops showed up, and she was wondering how come cops show up differently for white folks than black folks, and that she wanted to make this a national issue. So I said, well, hold it. Well, who's your city council person? Did you call them up? Why do you need to? I know it needs to be a national issue, but there's some local people who needs to be doing their jobs. So I said, did you call she said, oh, you know what? I did meet the councilman a couple of weeks ago. He told me he lives down the street. I said, well, did you go ring his bell? I said, why don't you start there? I said, Reverend Sharpton can get around as much as he can, but at the end of the day, you got local people who are getting paid, who have a budget to look out for you. And so I need you to tell me in a week that you went down to that city council person's house, and then if they didn't help you, they call us back. And then we'll call that city council person for you. That's the deal. So one of the things that young people got to do, there's a lot of seats that you guys can serve in. That's called county committee, district leader. I would like to see more of you run for office and claim the power. Let's stop waiting for people. Claim it, because it's there for you. If you're organized, you have an agenda, you can really make a difference. And that's what I believe.
Well said. Thank you.
Okay, that's actually wait, real quick, Pinnacle, real quick. This is Derek. I wanted to piggyback off of I want to say I'm happy to be here tonight. Actually, Dominique, everybody's here every week, every Monday. I want to salute y'all, man. This is a tough thing to do and be successful in Black excellence every week. I salute y'all. I want to talk about. Again, I'm touching on a little bit what everyone said previous, but what William thing struck me. Actually, before William, people are coming to the politicians, right? This is how the laws and stuff. People are coming to the politicians with policy and laws already made, and the politician, it takes people's ideas. So the Williams point and the other people's point before that, there are progressive people. People that's not of color that are really pushing the agenda. They call these people the progressives, right? I have the opportunity to join a phone call. I'm part of a group, a COVID-19 group, and these people are really, really, really on top of the policy. They're on top of what money is coming. They're up to minute on it. What the Senate is doing, what the House is doing, what this one is doing. This group is phenomenal. However, I'm one of maybe 2 Black people on this out of like 300 people that's pushing this agenda. And they welcome people to the table, but we're not at the table. We're not exercising our power. William didn't say, run for election for Congress, mayor, and all that big stuff, right? William said county committee. How many people in this call, in this room, on this Zoom, know what county committee is? How many people know what a district leader is? I didn't know till I met William Allen.
Speak, Derek.
You know, I don't know. And I have listen, years ago, I made a presentation on community board 10. It was about an MWBE, lack of all of this data. And being at that meeting showed me the people at community board 10 are ground zero for what happens in our community. So when a liquor store come up in your community, that's community board. When a building come up that you don't need, when a methadone drug clinic is opened up in your community, that's a community board. How many people on this Zoom, in this huddle, know where their community board is? We have to be more engaged. I know we all like to say, right? I don't like to get into social media beef and all that type of stuff, right? But I dibbled and dabbled in 2 last week. And it always attacking our leader about, you know, what he's doing. And I always say to myself, this man been doing this for over 60-something years. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Are you part of this? Are you part of that? But there's a lot of people in our community. Again, I'm touching upon everything, right? Ashley, Dominique asked in the beginning, like, what can the females do? What can the ladies do, right? And I'm kind of like Marshall, right? I want to give it to you raw. Me and Marshall Aquarius, right? We're going to give it to you raw. We don't care, right? Women got to stop crippling our men. Yes, we always praise them for holding us down, but a lot of our men are leaning on our women and is weak. Is weak to me. As a man, is weak to me. I was never one to be relying on a woman for things, right? But I see a lot of men that do. I don't have to know your business to know when I come to work in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, you on the corner. When I leave work 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, you on the corner. I know you didn't go to work today. I know somebody's paying the bills in that scenario. Somebody's feeding you. You know, you may do your 1-2s, but you're not making that type of money to really take care of a family. So we have to be more, men have to be more accountable. As a community, when people say, well, we got to get on the same page, we have to be a part of these community boards. We have to be a part of these district council meetings and these county committees. These people are picking the political power that's running for office. I knew none of these things more than 2 years ago. I knew none of these things. I want to tell y'all a story, right? A quick story. This happened recently. A well-known congressperson called me and asked for advice. They're in a race, right? They happen to be on a conference call with the rest of the congressional people, Pelosi, all of them. I gave this lady some advice that she was the only one on the call that gave it. Everybody was against it. The next day, Nancy Pelosi used her advice that I gave her. So I only say this, guys. I was available to someone who makes law. If we're not being available, if you're home smoking, drinking, playing a video game, we ain't gonna get nothing done, man. We ain't gonna get nothing done. There's a lot of our brothers. Listen, I got a son, 31 years old. He'd be mad at me, but I get on him. He play that damn game. And I look at this boy, he got my granddaughters with him. What are my granddaughters looking when they see you? They gonna think it's okay for a man to be sitting in the house all day playing video games. And listen, I'm guilty of that too. I've spent years on that game. But it's a time when you gotta say, I gotta grow up. I'm not touching this game. I got better things to do. And we gotta hold a lot of our men more accountable for our actions and be more responsible. We gotta be more involved in our community, on these community boards, to see what they building in our community, what they putting in there. And we all have to vote. I need everybody, tell a friend. Did you complete the census? 5 people, ask 5 people and challenge them to ask 5 people. The numbers are low, and we're gonna get political representation taken away, and we're gonna get a lot of money taken away from our community. And our community is already crippled as it is. So we need as much help as it is now.
Eric, what's tomorrow? Since you were talking about voting, what's tomorrow in New York City?
Oh, I'm sorry. Tomorrow is Tuesday election. Tomorrow is the primary in New York City for sure. I know there's a couple other places. The Democratic primary is tomorrow. You come vote for whoever you like in the Democratic Party in your district. I say get to know the candidates, see what their platform is, see what you connect with that matters to you. A lot of guys I argue with that voting don't matter. They don't have a issue or platform. They don't have anything they're passionate about. Find something you're passionate about. All right?
Thank you so much. You really hit a lot of things on the head with that. William, do you
There
want
was
to
so much stuff. There was so much good stuff said before
No,
me.
but it was excellent, and you really confronted a bunch of things that needed to be said. And
Yes.
we have a few more minutes left for the Zoom, so I just want to bring this up before William, before you answer, because I know you want to speak to the New York City primary tomorrow and why it's important to Black men to get out there and vote, and Black people as a whole, because it's usually in our community they downplay the primary elections, and I'm not sure why, because it's extremely important. But I just want to ask you one question, because it is June. It is Gun Violence Awareness Month, and I want us to, I know everyone, this could be a long-winded answer, but let's try to stick to shorter answers at the time because we're winding down. But this is the question. It's Gun Violence Awareness Month. Do you think there is more that can be done to invoke more in the fight to end gun violence amongst Black men? Chicago gun violence rates are as high as they have ever been. What can we do to curb gun violence during this climate? Do guns make men feel powerful? What is the root of this obsession with guns and violence in our community?
I think the solution is to eradicate poverty. Coming up, like me growing up, I mean, truthfully, I'll speak quite frank. Like, I mean, I grew up in the Bronx, and having a gun was always an option for me. You know what I mean? But why isn't an option is because of a multitude of things. Like, if I'm going to school and someone's taking my stuff, like, you know what I mean? Like, or if I know I'm walking on the wrong block. Like, I've been in situations where, and my mom is in the chat, she can even speak to it, where I was in a situation where someone had a toll on a certain block, and if I walked through that block and didn't give him money, it was a problem. Wow. And there was one day where I didn't have money to give him, and I walked in my mom's house, I was bloody and beaten. Like, I got beat. So it's like, having a gun is always an option for certain people, because of in poverty, like, that's like, it's always a fight for everything. It's a fight for all resources. And when you're fighting for resources, violence has to be, it's a reality. It's not like, and I don't condone gun violence. I'm 100% against gun violence. But when it comes to protecting yourself and protecting your livelihood, some people, in some people's minds, in their world, that is all they can do to protect themselves. So eradicating poverty and creating a system where everyone has resources and doesn't have to fight for every little piece of resource that's available, that alone will directly correlate to a decrease in gun violence.
That was a great answer. Thank you. William Allen? Can't hear you, William.
Yeah, I was trying to put my mic on.
Sorry.
That was an excellent answer. That was, oh man, that was very, very good. You know, I come out of an experience of mentoring and learning, right? And Derek and I talk about this all the time. I think Ashley, you and I spoke about it. Just more of us just need to teach what power looks like and what accountability looks like. As I tell the young people in Huddle and around there, and I said, listen, come talk to me anytime you like. You know, let me be a resource to you. Let me be a mentor, because we're hoping that you can take over. In fact, you can come through this crisis work. It's there for you. I mean, 50 to 75 people calling. I mean, please come do some of this stuff, and you can grow from it. And so young people, I mean, like, I'm old school, where when I wanted to get involved in something as a kid, I walked into the room. You know, Hazel Dukes would tell you, me and my peers, we took over the youth council back in the day. She wasn't happy with that. She said, all these little youth hoodlums, they're taking over William Allen and them from Harlem. And we did. We took over. And I remember they were trying to throw us out, and we would let them throw us out. We said, we're going to stay here. You're going to recognize us, and we're going to be involved. And so young people need to know that there are opportunities for them to help manage and lead their community if they want that. And if they want how to learn how to do it, NAN is a great teaching environment to show people how to be engaged. And so part of the message I'm hoping that also come out of Huddle is say, listen, we're open for you to be a leader. We're open to give you support, because we can't do it all. You know, there are places that lack leadership and direction, you know, and yes, there's still a lot of balance around in our community. Young people, I'm telling you, I could not be a young person today, a teenager. It is very violent. I listen to the young folks in my family, and often they are just scared out of their wits. And I know that we got to figure out how to do something more that just doesn't involve the police. It has to be more what we do as adults to make our children feel safe. Now, I'm going to end with this. Every police station in New York City has a community council. We need to make sure that people know that and they participate in that. Every precinct also have an Explorer Club for young people. We need to make sure that folks know that and we participate in it. So as we begin to try to move this money out of the police department, we should also talk about how they're spending money relating to community relations.
And the Flores program is an excellent program.
Exactly. And right now, the community councils, the precinct, right, Derek, they're only getting like, what, $200 a year to run a community council. That's
$200 a year for a budget to run something.
That's horrible.
That's not even
we
coffee.
got to make sure that we're in the budget, like Derek said, we got to be a part of the budget discussions to make sure that money is being put in the right place. So therefore, we can be truly a part of the law enforcement and public safety in our community.
I'll just say briefly that I agree with Brother Antoine about the economic factor, that when viable economic options are taken off the table, then people are more apt to turn to criminal endeavors in order to meet their immediate needs for survival. And I beat up on sports a little bit earlier. Let me give you the flip side, because it is, especially, and I'm coming from being in the streets every day in Miami, every day with these kids. And sports is the most powerful infrastructure of opportunity, just having that dream. Because I know that if they're in, a lot of the mothers put their sons in football because they know that they're going to get a whole team of coaches that are invested in them. They're going to receive consistent mentorship. They're going to believe in them. They're going to give them discipline. They're going to give them value. They're going to be cheered for. They're going to be appreciated. All of that, so they try to put them in that infrastructure of opportunity. So we have to we have to look at what's working in sports. How are they able to? Miami produces the best high school football players in America, bar none. None of the schools even have stadiums. They play at a common stadium. Weight room is dusty and rusty. Fields got holes in them. But they produce the very best because of the pipeline, the infrastructure pipeline, the community and family support. I went to a 6-year-old Pop Warner game. At halftime, the whole stands went over with the team to make sure that they were doing right. They were that vested in it. So let us learn from that infrastructure of opportunity and build more. Because a lot of our young people, when I'm in Liberty City, Overtown, a lot of these areas, Little Haiti, Miami ain't just South Beach. And I see a young man, Dominique will tell you, I'm trying to recruit him to the role model. Hey, what school you at? Anytime I see, what school you at? Northwestern, Northern? Hey, go see Mr. McCray and get in the role models. We need you in there, man. We need you in there, man. We need you. We need you in there. We believe in you. We support you. We need you in there, man. Because I'm competing against the drug trade. I'm competing against gangs. I'm competing against violence. So I said, if you want a brotherhood, if you want support, come. Hey, you don't have to join the game. Come join our game. Come be with the 5,000, and we'll pump everything we have into you and to making you believe. And so the best thing that we can do is just find these infrastructures full of love and just let a kid know that you believe in them, that you care about them, that you support them. That may be the thing that saved their life. Let me end on this. There's a young man, his name was Devontae, and he had got involved in gang. He was 17. And he got shot. He got shot like 5 times. And I got the word of it. I thought he had died, but he survived. He was in Jackson Memorial Hospital the next morning. I went to see him the next morning. Nobody was in the hotel room. Was in the hospital room. Nobody. His grandmother had been there earlier. She left. Nobody else cared about the kid at all. And that's why I said, man, let me try to get him on the football team. Because if he'd have been a football player, who had a lot of support, a highly ranked recruit, you'd have had the whole coaching staff in there. The newspapers would have known about it. You'd have had University of Miami football staff. What's going on with him, man? What's going on with him? But because he was no value to the community, I'll never forget that in my life. He's sitting in there just after getting shot in the hotel room by himself. Nobody cared. We have to do better.
Let's see if I can.
Thank you for sharing.
Try to chime a little bit on the gun violence piece. I'm a Southerner. I got my first gun. I think I was 10 or 11 years old. Like I grew up hunting. So I'm a Southerner. Here's an example. If I were to try to take this cell phone and cut my hair with it, folk on here would think I'm weird. That's the purpose of the cell phone. Again, it goes back to knowing the rules of the game, right? So when you begin to think about why guns are so prolific in America and why so many people cling to their guns and why they talk about the Second Amendment, it's the rules of the game. So we as a community of people use them to shoot up each other. That ain't what they're doing. They don't mind you having the guns to do that. Matter of fact, if I can Google, I don't know of any black gun manufacturers, so we ain't making them, right? So they're allowing us to use basically a cell phone to cut our hair, which makes us look strange and kill ourselves off. But that's not why they absolutely fight to protect their Second Amendment right. Part of it is their belief in protecting themselves against the reason why the Second Amendment was there. We talked about a well-armed militia, because when you begin to think about their protests, their violent protests to create America, they had to have people who really didn't have weapons. And so one of the reasons they wrote that Second Amendment in there was so that the populace would be well armed. But the populace didn't look like black and brown folks, so they weren't really concerned with us. So fast forward a little bit when you've got the Black Panther Party who's using these rules of the game to make sure they're armed, to look at folk who were arresting black people to make sure somebody wasn't saying, I can't breathe for 8 minutes or so as a knee is on their neck. When you got the Black Panther Party who had the legal right to carry weapons show up at the State House, all of a sudden the poster child for the NRA makes a statement that people shouldn't have any reason to have open carry in the state. What he meant was black people shouldn't have the reason to open carry. So part of this is we've got to make sure our people understand the rules of the game. We have got to stop allowing them to have these weapons show up in our community, because we ain't creating them the same way they allow drugs to show up in our community when we don't own private planes to do so. And understand that part of it is you taking part in the same game that they are in. It's not about killing each other, but more so making a statement that we will no longer allow the government to oppress us. That's the purpose of arming ourselves. So I think we have to change that narrative some. It's not about being powerful over your brother. One thing that happens is if you throw weapons into a community of oppressed, impoverished people and say you can use this to get milk and eggs for your family, there's a great chance that these people with resources will use it the wrong way. And the folk who wrote the rules of the game can stand back and laugh and giggle at black folk in Chicago who are shooting each other up so much as 101 in one weekend, while they have stockpiles of weapons in their houses and they're not doing that same kind of killing of each other. Push it a little bit further though. It's the same people now that will do mass shootings in Florida and all these other states or what have you. So now you've got a lobbying arm that is so powerful in that they won't even allow states to change their rules. I do think we ought to have better regulations of weapons. Like I can't go buy penicillin without a prescription. But I can go buy an AR-15. Something wrong with that. No matter how you look at it, there is something tremendously wrong with that. So I think we need better policies when it comes to guns.
Cool.
All right. Well, yes, that's. We definitely tell from the fervor of our gentlemen on tonight that this discussion definitely was needed, is needed for our communities to keep having. And it's also relevant to, of course, this platform of National Action Network's Youth Huddle. So we want to thank everyone for their input. I do want to, I know Pinnacle has something else that he wants to add to the conversation, but if you did have an answer to the gun violence question that Ashley posed, please answer that or give your final statement to close the discussion tonight. And then we'll hear from Pinnacle Garcia, our Vice President of NAN's Youth Huddle, to close us out for the evening, and Minister Stephen Marshall. Did anyone have closing remarks or wanted to answer the gun violence question?
Let me just say thank you for the opportunity to share. Everything about the gun violence was on point. And I want to say, one of the questions that Ashley talked about, what can we do? I think our national whole idea of marching is to commit. And I want to commit tonight with $100 to the Youth Huddle. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
I think sometimes we got to put our money where our mouth is and so forth. So I'll just say job well done. And thank you for allowing me to hang out.
Thank you for being here.
Smart, intelligent people.
I'm a Baptist preacher, so I can't just let him do that by himself. So I'll definitely join in.
I'm a master at raising offerings.
Listen. That was quick and easy. So yeah, I'll definitely join in and do the same as him.
Well, y'all can message Ashley privately to find out how to get that donation to Huddle. We definitely appreciate you. If there's anyone else that
we got to do at least 300. There's somebody else. We need another 100.
Go, Pastor. Race it.
Okay, while we're waiting on that 100 to appear, we thank you guys. But Pinnacle, you had something that you wanted to add to close us out, and then Minister Marshall. Pinnacle?
Yes. My last question is, if you could choose one item on the Black agenda, what would it be?
Last question for our panelists. As we're closing out, anyone can just chime in and answer. We don't have that much time left.
I would say reform the criminal justice system.
Reform the criminal justice system. Anyone else?
I would say if I would like to see one item, particularly on the Black agenda, would be a push towards.
If you're not talking, please mute your phone or your device. Go ahead, Antoine.
A push towards increase in quality education, so that when you come out of high school, you're in a better position to succeed at the next level, rather than having to, just a better quality education to train Black people for the new smart jobs that are coming out, and that we're going to need these technical skills to fight to get.
Anyone else?
Cancel student loan debt for Black people.
I would say more trade.
Especially those who have descended from slavery. Provide free college tuition for Black people, especially those who have descended from slavery. The banks that were bailed out now and during Obama's administration provide a large portion of that money that you were bailed out to aspiring Black business owners, so that they can have capital for Blacks, especially those who descended from American slavery.
Mine is simply one word: reparations. Give me my money.
I was gonna say reparations also.
Anyone else? Any other our panelists, please?
Yes, I have a question, Dominique. Also teaching our kids about the HS. Yeah, I have a statement.
Okay.
Teaching our kids about Black colleges, going to a Black school and a university, knowing about a trade, learning about trade. Every kid is not meant for college, but learning about a trade that they could use their resources. Electrician, fixing floors, doing anything in the trade system, being hands-on.
Okay, thank you, David. Brother David. Anyone else have anything else to add? One of our panelists?
Can you hear me?
Hi, Queen Mother
Hi.
Kennedy.
Yeah. One thing, yeah, because the panel, I think that one of the things that has really been bugging me is about the defund the police thing. I'm saying I feel that we need to defund the police unions, because those police unions are the ones that get the cops off when they're doing things. I know I'm late, but that's one to really like to see. Not defund the police, but defund the police unions that help get these cops off. Do you know that they have a $1 billion they have $1 billion at their disposal? And this is one of the and this is one of the things that get the cops off and then get these cops going someplace else. So I say defund.
Thank you so much for your input and for joining us tonight. We love you, Queen Mother. Thank you so much for always being there and always supporting the youth. Is there anyone else that has any other panelists that spoke tonight that want to add something to the conversation? If not, we're going to hear from Minister Stephen Marshall to close us out tonight. I want to thank all of the panelists, all of the young men, Black men who joined us tonight to raise their voice of consciousness, of power, of strength. We salute you, we honor you, we love you. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your support. Keep up the good work. And for all of those who joined us tonight, thank you for joining us, who are watching us on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us, who joined us on Zoom. Thank you for joining us. We will resume again next Monday, same time, 7:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for another virtual huddle. Thank you again to our founder of NAN's Youth Huddle, Ashley Sharpton. Minister Marshall, please close us out. And I just want to say again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers. We love y'all, we value y'all, and we always have Black Lives Matter, Black men matter, Black women matter, and we always have Black children matter as well.
Amen, go right there.
Say hi to Mama.
All right. I mean, I just think everybody's brilliant. I think everybody's input tonight was necessary. I would encourage all of you that have not joined the National Action Network. You need your input inside of our institution to formulate the change we all say we want. So if you're not active, if you're not involved by way of just wordplay, put those words to action. Join the organization. If you don't know how to do it, you can go to www.nationalactionnetwork.net. Join. So this was great tonight. And so may the Lord watch between me and thee while we're absent one from another. Amen.
Amen.
Love you all.
Amen.
Amen, go right there.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. God bless y'all.
Say hi to
Thank
TT.
you for joining us always.
Say hi, TT.
Love you guys. God bless. Hi, Brandon.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
God bless you, Kings. And
Bye-bye.
next week will be Black Females Matter. So we're going to have our
bye-bye.
Go right there.
Love y'all.
Alicia, sing us
down
out.
with that one.
Bye-bye.
I'm down with all of them.
Y'all hear that? Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye.
Better days are coming, y'all. Better days are coming. Look at the baby.
Say bye-bye.
Alicia.
Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I see you, Cecil.
Bye-bye.
Hey.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Mom says,
Hey, baby.
hey.
Hey, sister.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye. Okay, well, we lost her.
Better days are coming.
This is progress on one of the
Better days are coming.
rooted African objects.
Leave, I'm getting kicked out.
Thank you, Alicia.
Better days.
Good night.
Bye, Miss Pam. We love you.
Better days.
And thank you for your leadership.
Friends will leave you all by yourself. Don't cry. Better days are coming.
Amen, y'all. Better days are coming. Love y'all.